Good evening, and welcome back. Tonight we're doing something a little different. Instead of one day, we're going to live through a whole year, for seasons in a small village in England, around the year 1300. It's a village of perhaps 30 households, with a church, a mill, a green, and 3 great fields that feed everyone in it. It has no famous name and appears in no chronicle. Which is exactly why we're going, because for almost everyone who has ever lived, history looked like this. Fields, seasons, neighbors, weather, and the slow, dependable turning of the year. There's nothing to remember, and no one is going to hurry us. The year turns at its own speed. All we have to do is turn with it. We begin in the deepest part of winter, in the middle of the night, under snow. Snow has been falling since dusk, and the village has gone soft at the edges. 30-odd houses lie along a single street, each in its narrow yard, long, low houses of timber and clay, thatch pulled down over their walls like hoods. The church stands at one end, a little stouter than everything else, its small tower holding up the falling sky. Beyond the last yard, the 3 great fields sleep under white, and the woods beyond them are a held breath. Nothing moves but the snow. It is somewhere past midnight, and yet, in the nearest house, there is a low glow at the shutters crack, and quiet voices. The village is awake. This is not a crisis. This is simply how nights work here. People in this world sleep in 2 halves. They go to bed with full dark, candles are dear, and the day's work is heavy, and sleep hard for some hours. And then, in the deep middle of the night, the household stirs. They call the halves exactly what you'd hope, first sleep, and second sleep. And the waking hour between them has no name at all, because it needs none. It is simply the quiet time. By the banked fire, the good wife feeds a few twigs to the embers and puts small beer to warm. Her husband mends the strap of a wooden shoe by feel more than sight. An old mother murmurs a prayer, unhurried, with pauses that may be devotion and may be dozing, and no one would dream of asking which. A child wakes, is given a heel of bread, and sits blinking at the fire with the deep philosophical seriousness of the very young at strange hours. Nobody lights a lamp. Nobody speaks above a murmur. The hour between sleeps is for low things, soft talk, small tasks, remembering, letting the fire warm your shins. Then, one by one, the household folds back into the straw and wool of the sleeping places, and goes down into second sleep, the sweeter one, the one that lasts till the grey of morning. At the far end of the house, behind a woven hurdle, comes a heavy sigh and a shifting of large bodies, the oxen, byred indoors for winter, sharing the roof and, generously, their warmth. Their breath drifts over the partition like a blessing. The house smells of smoke, straw, animals, and sleeping people. It is not a smell anyone here would think to name. It is just the smell of winter, and of everyone being safely in. Outside, the snow keeps its slow work, filling the lane, softening the roofs, tucking the whole village in under one white blanket. And the year, though nothing shows it yet, has already turned. The days, by a minute or 2, are growing. Winter is the village's indoor season, and it is busier than it looks. Daylight is short and grey, so the day is planned like a purse with little in it. The stock come first, hay forked down for the oxen and the cow, the sheep seen to in their fold, hens fed, the pig, there is always a pig, given its slops and its opinion heard. Water is broken free of ice. Dung is carried to the midden, where it ripens into next year's fertility. Nothing here is waste, only wealth at a different stage. Then the light hours go to mending. The plough is brought in and gone over joint by joint. Harness is oiled. Tools are set right on the whetstone. The goodman splits and stacks wood with the steady economy of a man who knows exactly how much winter is left and exactly how much woodpile. In the yard, hurdles are woven from hazel rods, fencing, folds, partitions. The medieval world is held together to a remarkable degree by cleverly woven sticks. And everywhere, always, the spinning. Every woman and girl spins whenever her hands are otherwise free, by the fire, at the neighbor's, walking to the well, rocking a cradle with one foot. Wool to thread, endlessly, because thread becomes cloth and cloth is shirts and hoods and blankets and hose. The distaff tucks under one arm, the spindle drops, twirls, climbs, the thread grows. It is the quiet engine of the whole household, and its rhythm is so steady that it has soothed more infants to sleep than every lullaby ever written, combined. Evenings are the fire, and the fire is the parlor. Neighbors drift in with their own mending. Someone tells a story everyone knows, and it is welcomed like a guest. There are riddles for the children. There is ale, the daily drink, brewed in batches by whichever wife's turn it is, announced by a green branch over her door. Water is for washing, ale is for drinking, and everyone, at every age, agrees. And stitched through the dark months, the feast days, because the village's calendar is the church's calendar, and the church, mercifully, is generous with it. The year's deepest rest is the 12 days of Christmas, when by ancient custom the land itself is left in peace, no ploughing, no spinning even, the great wheel of work chocked still. There is church, and then there is eating, the best the storeroom can do, and games, and songs, and the lord of the manor is expected to feed his tenants at his own board at least once, and does, with varying grace. 12 whole days. The village emerges blinking, heavier by a little, lighter by a great deal. By late January, the light is stretching. A blackbird tries half a song. In the byre, the oxen scent something and grow restless. The fields are calling the village back. The first Monday after the 12 days is Plough Monday, the door of the working year. It opens with ceremony, as good doors do. The plough itself is dragged to the church to be blessed, a beast of oak and iron, orred share and coulter and mouldboard, the single most important machine in this civilization. The priest sprinkles it, the village approves, and then the young men haul it through the lanes in a rowdy procession, collecting pennies and cakes at each door with cheerful menaces, and the year is officially awake. Real ploughing waits on the weather, but when the frost gives, the great fields take the village back. Understand the fields, and you understand everything here. There are 3 of them, fast, hedgeless, open, and every household's land lies scattered through them in long narrow strips, a furrow turn wide. One field carries the winter grain, wheat and rye, sown before the frost. One will carry the spring grain, barley and oats, with beans and peas. And one lies fallow, resting, grazed and dunged by the village stock, gathering strength for next year. Each year the roles rotate, like a slow 3-part dance that takes 3 years to complete one figure and has been running for centuries. No man ploughs alone. A full plough needs a team of oxen beyond any one household's owning, so neighbors pull their beasts, your 2, my 2, his pair, into a village team, and the strips are done in their turn. It makes every furrow a small treaty. It means your harvest depends on your neighbor's oxen, and his on your good word, and everyone's on the reeve's list of whose turn it is. Nobody here ever needed to be taught the word community. They plough with it. And so, on a cold bright morning, the year's first furrow, the ploughman leans into the stilts, his boy walks at the teen's head with a gourd and a repertoire of encouragements, some traditional, some improvised. The oxen take the strain with the unhurried might of their kind, and the earth opens in a long dark ribbon, steaming faintly in the cold air, the smell of it rich enough to lean into. Behind the plough, the whole parish of birds convenes. Rooks, gulls blown inland, starlings, bickering down the new furrow after worms, an escort of screeching opportunists that every ploughman on earth has known. Up the strip and turn. Down the strip and turn. The day is measured in furlongs, furrow-longs, and by dusk the ploughman has walked, behind his slow team, the better part of a dozen miles, all of them within sight of his own roof. He sleeps that night like a stone in a wall. First sleep takes him before full dark. March, and the spring field is ready for its seed. The sower goes out with a seed lip at his hip, the basket of barley, kept from last year's crop, the village's saved future in a hamper. He walks the strip at a pace older than kingdoms, and his hand swings in wide, even arcs, broadcasting the seed in a whispering fan. It looks casual. It is anything but. An even hand means an even crop, and every farmer's eye in the village can read a sown strip like handwriting. Behind him come the harrows, dragged over the strips to comb the seed into the soil, and behind the harrows, with grave enthusiasm, the village children, whose sacred springtime office is bird scaring. They are armed with slings, clappers, and voices that carry astonishingly. The rooks treat the whole arrangement as a long-standing game in which they are comfortably ahead. Everything is sprouting at once now, including the work. Garden crofts behind each house are dug and set with cabbages, leeks, onions, garlic. Beans and peas go into their own strips, food that fattens the soil while it fattens the family, though nobody here would put it that way. They only know beans rest the land, the way they know rain is wet. The fallow field gets its first ploughing, turning in the winter's dung. Lambs arrive in the fold, suddenly, absurdly, all legs, and the shepherd's nights grow short and his patience long. There is a hunger in this season, and it is honest to say so. The old grain is running low and the new is only a green promise. The storeroom echoes a little, meals leans harder on pottage, the eternal pot of peas, beans, leeks and barley that simmers at every hearth in England, and everyone glances, more often than they admit, at the growing wheat. Lent's fasting sits in this thin time, and perhaps that is no accident. The Church, wise in seasons, makes a virtue of the necessity. But the days widen. The light comes back like a tide. And there is one evening, every year there is one, when the goodman stands at the head of his strip after supper, and the winter wheat is suddenly a hand tall and impossibly green the way embers are orange, and the swallows are back stitching the sky over the church tower, and he stands there a while, doing nothing at all, which for him is nearly unheard of. Then he goes into his supper and says the wheat is come on fair, in the tone of a man remarking on the weather. Some feelings are too large for a farmer to say any other way. May and early June, and the village lives in a rising green tide. The grain is up in both fields, and the work now is weeding, long, bent, gossiping lines of neighbors moving through the strips with hooks and forked sticks, evicting thistle and dock and the scarlet poppies that everyone curses and no one entirely hates. The children weed too, at the pace of children, which is to say in bursts, between important discoveries. The cow, in milk with the spring grass, makes the croft rich for a season. The dairy is the good wife's kingdom, milk into curds, curds into cheese, cheese into the storeroom to harden into winter's protein, butter churned in the cool of the morning, whey and buttermilk drunk or fed to the pig, who approves of dairying more than any creature alive. This is a good moment to visit the two machines at the village's heart. The mill sits on the stream below the green, and it grinds every household's grain, for a toll of the flour, which the miller takes, and the village eternally suspects him of taking generously. Every land has its stock jokes, the medieval miller carries his with professional resignation. But watch the mill work, the wheel turning in its race, the great stones whispering round, flour ghosting the air until the miller is pale as a spirit, and you are watching the village's daily bread being made possible by falling water. There are worse magics. And near the green, the common oven, its dome hot from a furze fire, where the wides bring their proved loaves on a wooden peel. Baking days are social days. The oven queue is the village's second parliament, and considerably better attended than the first. Through it all, the church keeps time. Its bell is the village clock, ringing the morning, the noon, the evening, ringing Sundays and saints' days, when the strips lie quiet and the green fills up with the whole parish in its better clothes. There are more such days than you might guess, dozens across the year, and the village keeps them all, gravely in the morning and less gravely by afternoon, with ale and football of a lawless local kind and dancing that the priest pretends harder not to see in proportion to how well it is danced. Work and rest, braided by the bells. Nobody here has ever seen a clock. Nobody has ever missed one. In June, the village pays its two great debts to summer, the sheep are sheared, and the hay is made. Shearing first. The flock is driven to the stream and washed, an operation involving 6 men, 40 sheep, and no dignity whatever. Then, fleece by fleece, the shearer folds each ewe against his knees and unwraps her in long practiced strokes, the fleece coming away whole, like a coat handed over. The ewes trot off scandalized and suddenly small. The fleeces are rolled, stacked, counted twice. Wool is the kingdom's treasure. England's wool clothes half of Europe, and great abbeys and greater fortunes float on it, and even this little village feels the pull of that vast trade at shearing time, when the wool buyer comes riding with his scales, and pennies, actual silver pennies, rare as comets, enter the village economy. Then the hay. The meadow by the stream, the richest land the village has, too precious to plough, is ready in the long light, and for a week or two everything else gives way. The mowers go in at dawn, scythes whispering in slow unison, laying the grass over in sweet green swathes. Behind them the whole village turns and tosses the hay to dry, wives, children, grandmothers, everyone with a rake or a fork or at minimum strong opinions about the weather. Because that's the wager, cut grass must dry in the sun, and a wet week can rot a winter's fodder where it lies. Every cloud is watched like a debtor. When the hay is made, dry, fragrant, rustling, it is carted and built into stacks shaped like loaves and thatched like little houses, and the village breathes out, the oxen and the cow will eat next winter. The buyer is provisioned. The year's first great gathering in is done. Haymaking evenings are the year's sweetest. The work is hard but clean, the light lasts forever, and supper comes out to the meadow, bread, cheese, ale under the hedge, the smell of cut grass on everything and everyone. The young are suddenly very interested in raking near other particular rakers. The old sit against the hay and remember other Junes, editing them gently. On St. John's Eve, midsummer itself, bonfires burn on the high ground, old fires, older than anyone's asking, and the village stays up in the strange late gold of the year's longest evening, and the children fall asleep in the grass and are carried home like sheaves. After midsummer, the light begins its long slow ebb. And in the two great fields, almost secretly, the green is turning gold. July is the strange pause in the farming year, the held breath before harvest. The hay is in, the grain is ripening beyond anyone's help, the weeds have lost the war. There is work, there is always work, but it has a lighter step. Beans are picked, the fallow gets its second stirring, sheds are readied for the coming grain. And the village, briefly rich in time, attends to its other business. The manor court sits, in the hall, or under the old oak, and the village governs itself under the Lord's umbrella. The reeve, a villager chosen from the village, presents the season's matters, whose beast strayed into the wheat, who ploughed a furrow off his neighbour's strip, who let a ditch silt, who brewed weak ale, an offence taken seriously. Fines are small, grudges are aired, boundaries are walked and sworn. The Hayward, warden of the hedges, testifies with the fatigue of a man whose profession is other people's cows. It is law at the scale of a family argument, run by neighbours on neighbours, and it works, mostly, which is as much as law anywhere has ever managed. The village repairs itself in this season too. Thatch is patched, the church gets whitewash, the millpond is cleared. A peddler comes through with needles, ribbons, news 3 counties old, and is the most exciting thing to happen since the last peddler. A friar preaches on the green. Pilgrims pass on the road and are given ale and cross-examined about the world. And in the evenings, the village sits at its doors in the long light, that deep, honeyed, endless light of high summer, and watches its own wheat. You can hear it, if the wind is right, a dry, papery conversation, acres wide. The ears are heavy. The gold is deepening day by day. Men walk out after supper, rub a head of grain between their palms, blow the chaff, bite a kernel, and walk back saying nothing, in the manner of judges before a verdict. Everyone knows what is coming. The whole year has been aimed at it, like a long slow arrow. Lammas is coming. The harvest is coming. Sleep deep, in these last soft evenings. The village is about to earn its year. On the 1st of August, the village brings a loaf to church. Lammas, loaf mass. The first ripe wheat, cut, dried, ground, and baked into the year's first new bread, is carried up the nave and blessed at the altar. It is a small ceremony, and it is everything. The bread that was a green promise in the hungry spring is real now, warm in the hands. The gap between harvests, the thin months, the echoing storeroom, closes today, with a crust. If you would like a single image for what religion feels like in this village, it is this, the year's first loaf, on the altar, and every head in the church bowed at the smell of it. And then the harvest gathers itself like a wave. Sickles are set on the whetstone until they sing. The barns are swept bare. Bargains are struck with labours from the road. Harvest is the one season with work for every hand that can close on a stalk. The reeve and the Lord Steward walk the fields naming days. The weather is interrogated hourly. Old men sniff the wind and issue contradictory forecasts with total confidence, as is their ancient right. The wheat stands ready, gold as a hoard, taller than the children hiding in it. Everything that this village is, the ploughing in the cold, the seed walked out by hand, the weeding, the watching, the prayers braided through the bells, all of it now lies out in those 2 fields, ripe, waiting only for the reapers. Tomorrow, before dawn, it begins. Tonight, the village goes to bed early, and lies awake a little anyway, the way you do before the great days. For a fortnight, the village pours itself into the fields, and the fields pour themselves into the village. The reapers go in at first light, a long line working each strip, the sickle gathers, cuts, and lays, behind each reaper a binder, often his wife, quicker at it than he is, and both of them know it, twists a rope of straw and ties the sheaf in one motion perfected across generations. Sheaves lean together in 2 stooks, little golden tents down the shorn strips, drying in the sun. The line moves like a slow tide up the great field, and the standing gold goes down before it, day by day. Everyone is in it. Children carry ale and bread to the lines, harvest ale, brewed strong for the season, earned by the hour. Grandmothers bind. The priest binds. The smith shutters his forge and reaps beside the men whose ploughs he mends. By law and custom the village owes the Lord's domain its harvest days too, the whole village reaping his wheat as the price of the year, grumbled at forever, paid forever, with dinner at the Lord's expense and small beer all day, and the work songs going up and down his field the same as any other. Behind the carts, when a strip is cleared and carried, come the gleaners, the widows, the old, the poorest, with the ancient right to gather what the reapers dropped. It is real bread, gleaning, a diligent gleaner feeds herself weeks into winter from the field spillage, and no reaper with a mother ever bound too carefully. Charity here is built into the furrows. Wagons sway up the lane all day, piled past prudence, children riding the load in glory. The great barn fills sheaf by sheaf to its rafters, and the smell of it, dry gold, dust, sun, is the smell of not being hungry next year. And when the last strip stands down to its final square, there is business with the last sheaf. It is cut with ceremony, shouted over, dressed like a little doll, carried home in state. Nobody can quite say why. It is simply what is done with the last sheaf, and has been since before the church came, and the church knows better than to ask. Then, harvest home. The whole village at long boards on the green, the Lord's goose and the wives baking, harvest ale going round, songs in rounds, torchlight, dancing, the year's one unbuttoned feast, earned down to the last stook. The village eats its own triumph. And sleeps, that night, all the way to the bottom. At the end of September comes Michaelmas, and the year sits down to do its accounts. Rents fall due. The reeve renders his tallies to the steward, the harvest counted in sheaves and strike measures, the domains yield, the mills toll, who owes and who is owed. Debts are settled in pennies where there are pennies and in kind where there aren't. A goose at Michaelmas is nearly money. Leases turn over, a strip changes hands, a son takes on his late father's holding, paying the entry fine, stepping into the furrows the family has walked for longer than the records go back. It is the quietest of the great days, ink and tallow sticks rather than bonfires, but the village feels its weight. The year has been weighed, and the village knows now, in numbers, what kind of year it was. This one, fair. Not the best in memory. Well clear of the worst. Fair, said with a slow nod, is a good word, in a world where the margin lives with the weather. And the work does not wait for the ink to dry. The stubble fields are grazed and then broken for winter ploughing, the winter wheat and rye go in, seed walked out into the cooling days exactly as the barley was in spring, the great wheel already turning into its next year before this one is done. Apples are gathered and pressed. Nuts come home from the woods in aprons. The pig goes to the oak woods for acorns, pannage, and returns each evening rounder and more pleased with itself, on a schedule everyone understands and no one mentions in its hearing. The swallows go. One day the sky over the church is stitched with them, the next it is empty, and the light has changed, and the first fires are lit at dusk instead of dark. The village pulls its world in closer, one hearth at a time. In November, at Martinmas, the village lays in its winter. It is slaughter month. The stock is counted against the haystacks, so many beasts, so much fodder, and the arithmetic is honest and cannot be argued with, and the animals that cannot be wintered are killed now, at their fattest. It is grave, necessary work, done with skill and without waste. Nothing leaves the yard but the squeal, as the saying nearly goes. And then the village becomes, for a week, one great larder, bacon salted into troughs, hams hoisted into chimney smoke, sausages, puddings, tallow for rushlights, hide to the tanner, horn to the horner. The pig, the summer's companionable disposal system, becomes, with sober gratitude, the winter's bacon, and every rafter in the village grows its row of dark, smoke-gilded shapes, the architecture of survival. Salt fish comes in from the market for the fasting days. The last cabbages are pitted in straw. Ale is brewed strong against the cold. The storeroom fills, shelf by shelf, and the goodwife counts it with her either way the reeve counts sheaves. Outside, the year closes down gently. The winter wheat is up, a green fur on one great field, asleep on its feet till spring. The other lies ploughed and dark. The third rests. The oxen come back indoors to their end of the house, and the house is glad of the warmth and pretends otherwise. Rain walks the fields for days at a time with nothing to spoil. The bell sounds different in the wet air, closer, older. Work moves back under the roof, threshing in the barn now, the flail's slow double knock going all winter, sheaf by sheaf, turning harvest into grain as it's needed, winter's heartbeat, steady as the spinning by the fire. Advent comes, quiet weeks, fasting and firelight, the year's last lap. The village mends, spins, threshes, tells its stories, and waits, without impatience, for the great rest it can feel coming. The first snow falls one night, unwitnessed. By morning the 3 fields are one white page, written over with bird tracks. And so the wheel closes. It is midwinter night again, perhaps the very night we first arrived. Snow on the thatch, the lane filled and smoothed, the church tower holding up the sky. In the longhouse, the fire is banked to its slow red heart, the oxen breathe behind their hurdle, and the household lies deep in first sleep, all breathing in the dark like one creature keeping itself warm. Nothing about the village has changed, to look at. And yet the whole year lies stored inside this stillness, the furrows under the snow, sown and sleeping, the barn holding the harvest in the dark, rafter high, the bacon in the smoke, the wool gone off to clothe strangers in cities no one here will see, the hay in its little thatched stacks, the new son on his father's land, the year's bread, eaten and becoming the people who ate it. The village is a granary of its own year. Winter is just the lid. In a few hours the household will stir into the waking hour, and murmur, and mend, and return to second sleep. In a few weeks, Plough Monday will drag the plough round the lanes again with cakes and shouting. The furrow, the seed, the green blade, the gold, the loaf on the altar, the last sheaf dressed like a queen, the goose at Michaelmas, the bacon at Martinmas, the 12 still days at the bottom of the year. Round and round, at the pace of oxen, for centuries. Most of everyone who ever lived inside this wheel. It was hard, and it held. It fed the children and buried the grandparents and rang its bell through every kind of weather, and on the whole, taken all in all, it kept its people. There is a deep old comfort in a turning thing. Ask the stars. Ask the mill wheel. Ask the village, asleep under the snow, already leaning, by a minute or two of daylight, toward spring. Let the wheel turn without you now. It knows the way. Sleep well.